This is going to be your guide to using the Greataxe in New World Aeternum. So the Greataxe has been my primary weapon for the over 800 hours I've been playing this game, and I recently started leveling up and picking up other weapons to make guides for and just understand the game a little better. But it has a lot of merit, and that's what we're going to be breaking down. So let's start off with the attributes, where you just want to go unga bunga, max strength, get this thing as powerful as possible because you don't really need anything else. Okay, 5% critical hit chance, 5% damage from random critical hits. That's cool. That's kind of all you need. And what makes the Greataxe so strong is that it has a lot of built-in lifesteal and leeching effects, so you don't need a lot of constitution, at least in the late game. Like early on, if you're dying a lot, yeah, you might want to get some more constitution for that survival, because there's soft caps in the game that, like, once you hit a certain amount of attributes, and I guess if I'm making a guide, I should actually look up that number. Oh wow, I wasn't expecting an article on the New World website. Now, this is outdated because it's from a much earlier point in the game before there were more levels and more gear score and stuff, but it does talk about how, like, stats are soft capped at 195 points, and you start getting diminishing returns even if you go beyond that cap, but you also get diminishing returns starting at 100 points. Probably been changed a little bit, but even if you just, like, play the game, you start, like, specking around, yeah, you get less stats the higher you go into something. Then you're really just kind of playing for these bonuses, which are really good on the strength tree. 10% base damage to abilities and final attacks and melee light attack chain. So just 10% ability damage, that's cool. If you're under 90% health, you also get 7% base damage. Base damage is a big deal because you're getting so many modifiers on top. Then you also just find, like, physical damage, heavy attack damage, light attack damage early on. And the thing is, we only scale with strength on the Greataxe, so it's not like a dual scaling weapon such as the Greatsword, where at some point, the dexterity is just better to put points into if you want to get raw damage out of your weapon, and then you're also getting the extra utility that you don't find when you cap out on strength or some kind of other stat. 200 points is also just really good to have into Constitution before you get a Blood Drinker, so you split that between Strength, Constitution, and you're going to be doing just fine. So in making other guides, I just kind of realized, like, oh, Void Blade and Max Intelligence build is just better than, like, Greatsword, but only if you're, like, super bissed out. Now, the thing about the Greataxe is that, to me, it feels like the best mid-game weapon for content. Now that I'm, like, a maxed out character, though, and I've been playing around with other things, I learned, oh, Void Blade is just better if you invest all of your money into that to get Biss, and then you just do more damage than the Greataxe somehow and have infinite sustain. But until that point, until you get your Blood Drinker, you find a lot of sustain in the Greataxe, which makes it great for solo or even group content. Heal yourself for 30% of damage done by Reap. You pretty much want to hold on to this as, like, your, oh, I'm low, and there's multiple things hitting me, and then you do, like, the double hit from having Reaper spec'd out, and then you just back up to full health, and you don't need too much crazy life-stealing effects if you can't afford it early on in the game. So, like, it gives you a lot of free consistency and a lot of base power through your weapon tree, and you just get all kinds of effects. So you get more damage from Insatiable Gravity Well, more armor when people are nearby. So, like, yeah, you just get into a pack, and then you don't die, and then your heavy attacks get grit. Now, the thing about the Greataxe is you have a lot of grit just kind of baked in, especially if you're using heavy attacks, so thwarting strikes over enchanted is going to be what you want, and then you can also get trenchant strikes if you plan on just primarily doing heavy attacks, which is fine. Like, you just charge up grit heavy attacks, and then you swing for crazy amounts of damage. Whirlwind versus Maelstrom is kind of thing, so you always want to have Reap, you always want to have Gravity Well. Whirlwind has a really good weapon perk, but if you don't like it, because it does feel a little weird and it can be a little underwhelming at times, Maelstrom is also really good because you get to pull people in, it combos into Gravity Well and Reap, still has a ton of AoE damage, consumes projectiles, and ends up with grit. Also, it means you don't have to put points into Heavy Pull. I don't like this. This is just here to get us to the second tier. So, without Whirlwind, you have Maelstrom, and then you go into Death's Embrace, which gives you armor penetration, and that actually has damage against PvE because everything has, resistances. But then there's Mauler's Fury. So Greataxe attacks give you 3% damage increase for 3 seconds, max 10 stacks. Well, Whirlwind counts as a hit each. So you can stack up your 30% quick on the Whirlwind, whereas it takes a bit more with, like, Maelstrom and other hits inside of it. So yeah, with this loadout, you can just kind of take on any content. As for building it out on the levels, that's where it gets tricky, because like you really want hunger, but then you really want reap. So like you just kind of go whirlwind, gravity well. Unfortunately, you need this. You also need the grit, and then that's when you kind of load out on the Reaper tree, and you get the little bit of extra perks, and eventually you find stats into the Mauler's Fury. Even though it's a lot of damage, there's just like too much utility and sustain and bonus critting and stuff over here. And that's also why, like, oh, it's good. You just pick up a crappy Great Axe in the early game, you use it to get through the story and mid-game content, you come out with like 15 weapon levels, and now you're stacked and you're able to just handle anything. So it's not going to be like super duper crazy in-game like we've shown with the Void Gauntlet, but it's still pretty powerful. As for the weapon, this is a good example of a powerful Great Axe. We have refreshing move, we have long cooldowns, so the more like you're swinging, the better it is. However, if you're doing heavy attacks, you're getting like slower hits, so refreshing move isn't proccing as much. And if you don't have a Blood Drinker, I just recommend life stealing. Like, you need life steal, you need keen, and then enchanted or thwarting strikes or trenchant, and you're good. Whee! And then we can see the difference on trenchant strikes versus thwarting, where it's like, yeah, just get the grit perk and then get heavy attacks, and then you're doing 23% more damage at max rank. I'm gonna take that. And we have keen. Who cares if it's effectively a 2 perk axe? It's gonna have more damage. And then we could take a look at like the most expensive axes that people are making. Someone had an axe factory out here, and that's what I bought from, where like, yep, they were just making thwarting, keen, refreshing move axes all day long and selling them for 10k on a late stage legacy server. Fortifying whirlwind and refreshing move though, also pretty good because you're getting more fortify by having it on the axe, and then people also go for the insatiable gravity well. And thwarting strikes isn't terrible because your abilities with grit will get that damage, but most of it is going to be heavy attacks. As for the gem, I really like Jasper because you're in there getting hit constantly multiple times, so you're keeping the 24% damage stacks of retaliate, and it's just really good. Emerald is also nice for like larger enemies, because like once they hit that health threshold, then you're just getting free bonus damage, and it's synergizing with all of your other effects. There is a case for Onyx, kind of like 18% damage against 70% health. I think that threshold is too high. So like you quickly pass that threshold and then lose damage. So it's not like it gets you to your execution points faster. And then it's just lower damage overall, where it's like, well, technically it's 18% for 30% instead of something like an Emerald, which is going to be higher. Emerald is going to be 16% below 50% health, so that means Onyx is like average 5% damage, this is average 8% damage, something, 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 numbers and math. What about the rest of our gear? Well, as you saw, we are going very heavy into strength, so you just want like strength on your equipment, you want to go for medium equip load. I failed with that because I'm trying to also get a lot of luck on my equipment, since we have a lot of natural strength from the Great Axe. Just kind of show like, oh, this isn't this. You can actually afford to put points into other things and still run the Great Axe very comfortably. You're not going to have instantly dissolving DPS like on the Void Blade or sometimes the Flail, but you're going to be consistent and you're going to be comfortable, and that's like a huge benefit of the Great Axe, and it works really well through all stages of content. So you want to get like strength, enchanted ward, and then whatever else. You will need perks. You want insatiable gravity well. You want fortifying whirlwind. Because, like, listen to this. You get 5 stacks of 10% fortify, 5 stacks of 8% slash damage. And your fortifying whirlwind is just going to, like, keep scaling crazy. Ignore the void harnessing. This is a part of my abyss loadout, and that also makes things different when we get into artifacts. But then, like, yeah, we just have enchanted ward, luck with strength, and then the perks that we need, and then everything else echoes that. So just like a random leeching ring with strength. This doesn't, like, you want slash damage and leeching and refreshing, but you can't always get what you want. I have a blood drinker anyway, so I'm not paying like 50k for one of those rings at 700 gear score or something. I want to see what our sustain is like with the Great Axe that doesn't have life stealing on it, on just a leeching ring without like the most efficient medium equip load, and we also have more strength than sense and no constitution. If this works, then we're just good on like our clear outs and testing. So let's go and test that. Then we can talk more about it. Also, you want to have divine incoming healing, counts as lifesteal, free health. You're going to be drinking more potions with this build, but that's fine. And then refreshing, regenerating, stay alive. Cool stuff. And the thing about the Greataxe is that it's pretty cozy. You got long cooldowns, you just throw out all of your abilities, and you're chilling. On this pull, I like to make sure everyone gets a little close together. That way they're all stacked up for the gravity well. Then we're going to see how this goes. So yeah, you get everyone in, go gravity well, do a big hit right there, whirlwind everything, and yeah, they just got it cleared out. Actually, wait a second. This is going a lot better than I thought with more damage than I was expecting. Hold up. Greataxe is back, boys. As good as the Void Staff. Not Void Staff. Maybe if you go 500 strength and no constitution, it's actually as strong as the Void Blade. Alright. Oh, we took some hits. Oh, we're low. But then we just get all of our health back, and it's cool. And then we reap, and we get all of our health back, and it's cool. And yeah, it works out just fine anyways. See, like, this is the power of Greataxe Bloodringer, where it's like, oh yeah, solo content? What's that? I'm just a tank. I don't need healers. Maybe actually if, like, you're doing expeditions without a tank, you just want to be DPS, then you want to put a little bit more constitution so you don't get, like, immediately one-shot, but you don't actually, like, need a healer. And then you're just in there making it work. Alright, let's hit that again, this time with the Bloodringer. I did mess up the gravity well, but again, that's like the whirlwind into fortifying whirlwind and the crazy damage, and never mind, Greataxe is better, we're good. But then we have the Greataxe artifact, the Abyss, which sounds like the coolest thing ever, but as we talked about in my Void Gauntlet Abyss guide, it's not that great. Check out my playlist for other guides and tips and tricks and gameplay and fun stuff about New World. Like, comment, subscribe, YouTube stuff. Because the problem is, like, keeping mana below 100% is actually difficult, especially if you're scaling with intelligence, which is where most of the mana weapons are going to be. Because if once you hit 200 intelligence, you end up just getting crit, or you get mana on crit, and that kind of undoes anything. Plus 10 mana on critical hit, so you crit, and then you're back to full mana, and then you're losing that damage. Also means, like, you have to throw all of your abilities and cast with your other weapon, come back here, and then start using things with your Greataxe. But again, by then, you've actually gotten a lot of your mana back, unless you are completely exhausted, but it doesn't really happen in, like, late game practice when you have a 700 gear score artifact. So Abyssal Attunement, I don't like this either, where it's just like, oh, you have a cooldown on only 14% damage. I put Trojan Strikes on it, you have the refreshing move, and then it's got Magnify, and it converts your damage into Void. Now, enemies generally have less magic resistance or less elemental resistance than physical resistance, so you get, like, just damage from that existing, but it doesn't do enough. And a big problem is this, because we convert our slash damage directly into Void, so that means the spaghetti code of fortifying Whirlwind not increasing our damage. Just slash damage means we actually lose out on this huge buff from fortifying Whirlwind. You can still have it for the fortify, but you're not getting that damage. So the clear out of Insatiable Gravity Well into fortifying Whirlwind just isn't there with the Abyss. And if you're going like a full intelligence Void build, because you go Void Harnessing and Void Rune Glass, you're getting elemental damage and ability damage, then you should just be like primary 100% usage on the Void Gauntlet. Because the way this thing clears out packs of enemies is pretty crazy, but as I just saw, I was like, wait a second, I thought the Greataxe was like not as good as I remember, but I guess if you put this much into strength, you're fine. And at some point, my strength food ran out, so I mean, we have even more stats. So yeah, just max out everything into strength. We stupid, we clunky, we have low health, but we just slap. We just cut things up like nothing else and somehow stay alive. Woo! We just got an 8,000 crit by timing that whirlwind, and then our other hits are just huge. So we get our Abyss up to 2060 as well with full strength, and then we can just kind of do all this fun stuff and see what happens to the crits with strength in the Abyss, and eventually we're going to crit. See, that's going to be a 7,400, and I believe if you go full intelligence, you actually get more damage because of the scaling through like elemental damage and ability damage, and again, enemies having less elemental resistance than physical resistance. But this kind of shows like it takes a lot of work to get the Void Harnessing and Insatiable Gravity Well and the Fortifying Whirlwind We have less enchanted wards, so we're technically squishier, but it doesn't matter really in the end. And then all of these like void things. Also, we don't have the gem, so our retaliate would give us more damage. I'm gonna do something stupid. I'm gonna put in the onyx to see what the 18% damage does. And then heavy attack. Woo! What a crit. Alright, so 9k on a crit, 7,000 on a regular attack. But then we're still doing 6,000 damage with an 8,000 crit. So again, you're not like losing 25% exactly. And then boom! 88. So it's like a 13% damage cut for 30% leeching. But I guess we do push into like 10k if we had a slashing ring. And then things are pretty crazy. So yeah, making this guide, Greataxe pilled me once again. It's one of the best weapons in the game. It's worth investing into, and it's simpler to build while having a lot of rewards. So hope you guys enjoy the video. Hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.